Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 227, Embracing Authenticity, a guide to healthy needs and vulnerability. Well, welcome back to a new month, which is going to be all about not wants, but needs. Now, I know we ended last month talking a little bit about needs, and yet I think it takes time to really sort through all the important aspects of getting needs met. It's not just one and done, and we want to take a three-dimensional look at all of this. We want to look at how do we get needs met in unhealthy ways, and what are some better, healthier ways to do that. Now, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, all about what needs really are, it might be helpful to pause this one and go back and listen to that first. You know, if you've listened to me for a while, or if you've been a coaching client of mine, you know that I will say needs are so important, and that I always say we will get them met either in healthy or unhealthy ways. But there's no third option. No matter who we are, no matter where we are, eventually something is going to play out. And that, I know, sounds kind of black and white and binary, but I've just seen the truth of that many, many times over. And I think it's important to look at it that way and to take responsibility for what we need. And that's what I want to get into today. We want to explore the difference between getting needs met in healthy ways and unhealthy ways, and then the role of vulnerability and how it can provide valuable insights and guidance to how to do this. Because here's the thing. If you've been doing it in unhealthy ways for so long, you need to know what it looks like to do it in a healthier way. Okay, but before we get into all of that, I want to remind you that the online course, Find Your Voice, is live now and available at a discount for a little while only. So make sure you click on the link in the show notes, and that'll take you to the sign-up page. And we are already starting our live group coaching calls on Zoom, and those have been really wonderful. So don't miss out. Get in there. If you have any questions, message me, email me, find me on social. Let me know what your questions are, and I will be right there to help you out with that. There's some really good material in that course. And if you like the podcast and you like things that we're going to talk about today, it might be right for you. Okay, so first let's talk about understanding healthy needs, and let's do a quick review. Needs are fundamental requirements. They are emotional or psychological necessities that are so essential for our overall well-being. They're crucial for our mental health, for our personal development, and they play a big role in maintaining a balanced and fulfilling life. All right, so what are we talking about here? Well, first, we need to know that they're fundamental. They are human requirements. And I know that some people get that and say, of course, that's a known variable. But others of you may struggle with that. And there are reasons. But they're human requirements that are universal, and they apply to every one of us. Like the need for physical safety, for nourishment, for social connection, and emotional support. Talk about Maslow's hierarchy, right? Needs are adaptive. In other words, they're aligned with our growth and our well-being. They support our personal development, our resilience, and our overall happiness. Meeting our needs in healthy ways is respectful. It's not greedy or selfish. Meeting healthy needs doesn't involve violating our own values, violating our own principles, going against our boundaries, nor do they harm others. They're achieved through respectful means, and that's important to remember. Because if you grew up with unhealthy people with poor boundaries and who were, let's say, a tad bit passive aggressive or manipulative, they may have tried to burn into your brain that it's selfish to ask for what you need, and you might hurt or harm someone else by doing that, like someone else in the family. Like the how dare you ask for that kind of mentality. So I wanted to speak to that. So why are they so essential? Well, meeting healthy needs is so vital for our overall emotional well-being. Because when our emotional needs like love, connection, and self-esteem are met, we have increased happiness, we have reduced stress, and better mental health. It's definitely going to impact our physical health. And I think we're starting to see as a society how crucial that is. It's not woo-woo. It's very serious. Like nutrition, rest, and safety are really essential for our physical well-being, because if we neglect these needs, we're going to have health issues and a reduction in our quality of life. There's a crazy percentage where stress causes physical illness. Our bodies weren't meant to be held under stress 24/7. Personal growth, meeting our healthy needs, supports our personal growth and our self-actualization, and it allows us to focus on our potential, helps us pursue goals, and have a strong sense of identity and purpose. And those things are really important. Relationship. Here's a big place where they play out. They play a pivotal role in building and maintaining healthy relationships. Because when we can express our needs openly and respectfully, it fosters better communication, it creates trust and respect, and I think emotional intimacy in relationships. So it's really important. And ironically, when we ask for what we need, we become more resilient. So meeting healthy needs helps us become more resilient in the face of life's challenges, so we can go out and tackle it. When they're consistently met, we have a better emotional foundation to cope with stress and adversity too. We're more well-nourished, so to speak. In other words, healthy needs are building blocks. They're so important, and it's really crucial that we recognize and we own them and we work on getting them met in healthy ways. Okay. But let's talk about unhealthy coping mechanisms, because I think it's really important to talk about this. And these are not all the ways. I mean, we could go on for hours if we wanted to include everything. But we're going to look at like passive aggression, avoidance, manipulation, and even substance abuse. And the reason why people resort to these things, because they're attempts to meet needs from a lack of awareness, lack of communication skills, or ability to address those needs directly and assertively because something got messed up a long time ago. You hear me say all the time that 4-year-olds will tell you exactly what they need. They have no problem expressing it very assertively and standing their ground because they believe themselves. Passive-aggressive behavior, that's when we express negative feelings or resistance indirectly rather than openly addressing the issue. So we might use sarcasm, subtle criticism, backhanded compliments, any way to hide our true feelings or what we're really frustrated about, which the other side of that pancake is an unmet need, right? A vulnerable need. And so if we do it this way, it's never good because we usually end up having lots of misunderstandings, unproductive conflict, and deterioration of our relationships. Because here's the thing, you've blown up trust, you've made it unsafe to be vulnerable and connect with you, you've made it hard for people to really get to know who you really are, and then your real need never gets met because the real issue remains unaddressed, and that is what is so key. Another way we do that is through avoidance. Especially in situations where confronting the need is going to seem really uncomfortable or daunting, like it might cause some healthy conflict at first, where we set a boundary and we're like, hey, I need you to help around here. I can't do all this work. But avoidant people avoid conflict. They avoid difficult conversations. and they turn away from challenging situations because they're trying to escape the discomfort. It's way too scary and uncomfortable. And they'll even rationalize all this to themselves and tell themselves things like, well, it's not a big deal. It'll be fine. It'll fix itself. It'll go away, right? I don't want to bother them. And so while avoidance will give you temporary relief, boy, does it create unresolved issues and prolonged stress. And here's the thing too, with avoidance, you're stacking dynamite. Whatever you're not dealing with, you're stuffing. And we're stuffing it somewhere. And it doesn't go away, it doesn't dissipate, doesn't go poof, it starts piling up. Avoiders will often lose their mind and act out and be really immature because they've just blown their top. They just can't take it anymore. They haven't told you what they need for so long. They've stuffed how they feel, and they've been like embellishing that and feeding that fireplace of resentment and not being heard and not being listened to and all the things. Then they blow it up, which is like, wasn't that the thing they were trying to avoid in the first place, was blowing it up, and then they blow it up. Then they don't garner very much respect from the other person because they just made it extremely unsafe to be in the kitchen with them, right? So another way that we can do this in a nastier way is manipulation. And that involves using tactics to control or influence other people to meet your needs, often at the other person's expense, the expense of their well-being or boundaries. Not good. This includes guilt tripping, playing on someone's emotions, creating a sense of obligation, making them feel like crap if they don't help you, making them seem like they're crazy for having their boundary, for having said no to you 5 minutes ago. Not okay. It makes the conversation very unsafe, and I would say toxic. You're going to blow trust. And you're going to make it so that person has to put their guard up with you. They're not going to be vulnerable back with you, and they're not going to trust you. Now, the ultimate is substance abuse or other forms of medication that some people turn to because they're trying to cope with unmet needs and stress and emotional pain, all the things they're not dealing with, because they're in denial or they're minimizing their needs. So when we dismiss what we need, we pretend they don't exist. And what we're doing is we're denying parts of ourselves, and we can only do that for so long. Isolation's a big one. A lot of people will pull away and withdraw from social interactions because essentially they don't know how to get out there in a relationship and ask for what they need in healthy ways and take care of themselves in relationships, asking for what they need, setting boundaries, negotiating things, so they don't feel safe. So their only recourse is to go where it is safe, maybe in their bedroom. But that creates loneliness and depression and all kinds of problems. Now, the most extreme form is self-harm, when people can't process and express what they need or what's really hurting them. So they try to make it concrete and they harm themselves. Okay. And that can become extreme in terms of suicidal ideation and plan and follow through. So if you know anyone who doesn't talk about what they need, check in with them. It's so important to look at these unhealthy ways of coping, and we've touched on them in lots of ways over the episodes. So look up previous episodes under the titles that hit you today that I talked about. What matters is if you struggle, if you're guilty of any of these behaviors, and again, each one is going to exist on a continuum of benign to god-awful, right? And lots of places in between. If you think you do some of that when you're stressed out, when you're scared, when you don't know what to do with your feelings, just know that there are healthier ways to do it, and you can fix this. This is something you really can change about your behavior, but you got to own it, and you got to be gut level honest with yourself. Okay? So this is where vulnerability comes in, and vulnerability is just so crucial for healthy relationships and personal growth. I mean, we're lying, right? We're not being emotionally honest. We're not connecting. You can't connect authentically and be emotionally dishonest. I just don't think it's possible. So vulnerability is the willingness to expose and share our authentic thoughts, our feelings, and our experiences, even when we don't know the outcome, especially when there's uncertainty, especially when there's emotional risk, especially when there's the possibility of rejection and judgment. I mean, if you struggle to do this already, that stuff probably already happened to you more than once. And it sealed the deal for you that you believe now, like, I can't do that. That's not going to go well because your brain has, socked away that data real quick. Because your brain has convinced you that it's not safe. Because maybe in the past it wasn't. Vulnerability is about being open and honest about your inner world, which means your fears, your insecurities, and your wishes and your dreams. And understanding that it's an essential part of human connection and personal growth. We need it. We can't live well without it. It's where all the magic happens. So let's talk about why it's so significant. Well, first, it's required for building trust and intimacy in our relationships. It's the cornerstone. When we share our true selves, we know this when we've had these moments with people, that it creates such a deeper understanding between you and them, doesn't it? Sharing vulnerabilities, whether they're sharing them with you or you're sharing yours with them, creates a safe space for open communication, and therefore emotional bonds can happen. You don't forget those profound moments that you have with people if you've been lucky enough to have them. Being vulnerable strengthens empathy and connection. So it's a two-way street, right? When one person is vulnerable, it then, I think, opens the door and encourages the other person to reciprocate and share their own feelings and experiences. It's called share, check, share. You share a little bit, see what the other person does with it. If you do it in a safe manner, and if they're healthy enough and ready to, they'll share their own stuff with you. Then you connect. Because the reciprocal vulnerability deepens the connection and empathy between both of you. The thing about being vulnerable is it's the opposite of pretense. It's the antithesis of hiding behind a mask, trying to be someone else, putting the codependent false self out there. And it therefore allows us to be real, to be honest, and to be meaningful. I heard one time Dennis Palumbo, who's a writer, talked about when you share your authentic truth, he said, and you don't tweak it, you don't move it an inch to the left or an inch to the right, because when it's real, people connect with your humanity. He said, think about it, whether you're watching the news or a movie or listening to someone share, when it's real and raw, it pulls up emotion inside of you because you too, right? You get scared, you get mad, you have felt joy. So you connect with someone in a profound way, and it's real because, like he said, that's us too. Like, we get that at the core, the real stuff. Anything else is really a misrepresentation of what's really going on inside of us, like how we're really struggling, how we truly feel, what we're so excited about or devastated around. The other thing is you can't resolve conflicts without vulnerability either, I don't think. Because you have to be real and you have to stay on your side and you have to share with them information about you. Ball goes back and forth, everyone's choosing. So it really, I think, increases the quality of our communication and our ability to problem solve and work alongside people. The other thing, too, is if we're not vulnerable with people and they're not vulnerable with us, we can't grow. It is such a crucial aspect of personal growth and self-acceptance. Because that way we can acknowledge our insecurities, our imperfections, things we're not proud of, and create better self-understanding. And when we accept more of ourselves, we feel more grounded, we feel more sane, we feel more peaceful, and more loving to others, and more accepting of others. See how that works? Emotional resilience, there's a big one. As we become more vulnerable, we learn to embrace and navigate our feelings rather than suppressing them or avoiding them. And that's really important. It's the only way to overcome fear and shame. Vulnerability challenges the fear of judgment, right? And the shame that we're supposed to, quote unquote, feel when we reveal our true self. That's the fear. Intimacy is you're going to see inside of me and run. You're going to reject it. You're going to abandon me. I'm not going to be good enough. So I'm going to lose relationship. I'm going to lose acceptance for who I am. So here are some examples of what we're talking about here. So the obvious one is sharing personal struggles. Imagine someone openly discussing their battle with anxiety, with depression, with friends and loved ones, right? By sharing their struggles, they really challenge their fear of judgment because there's shame attached to mental health issues still for a lot of people. So this vulnerability can really lead to a greater understanding and support in their social circle because people can understand what's going on with them and they can love on them and they're not alone. Another area is admitting mistakes. Let's say admitting mistakes at work. So if an employee made a costly mistake and admitted to it, they took responsibility and they were being vulnerable about their error. Okay? They're confronting that fear of judgment and shame and maybe being fired, right? Or demoted. I mean, this can lead to a more supportive work environment where the focus is on learning and improvement rather than blame, too. So if you're a manager, that's something to really keep in mind. Another vulnerable area is discussing relationship issues. Like in a romantic relationship, one partner might express their concerns and insecurities about the relationship. Maybe they're feeling neglected or unloved lately. Well, this vulnerability challenges the fear of judgment and shame that can come with admitting relationship difficulties, putting their needs out there. But it can also lead to open communication. They can resolve the conflict, create a stronger bond. Because if that partner doesn't share how they're feeling, the other person has no idea about what's going on. Revealing gender or sexual identity is a big one, and that's something that the milieu's been talking about for a while now. So let's say someone is coming out as LGBTQ+. They're going to face the fear of judgment and shame, especially in a less accepting environment. But by being vulnerable about their gender or sexual identity, they challenge these fears. What is great is if they can garner the support of friends and family, then they don't have to lose those relationships to be authentic in who they are. A big one that's hard to do is acknowledging our past mistakes. Because we're challenging the fear of judgment and shame of being imperfect, of hurting someone with our mistakes. But when we share them and we take ownership for them and try to repair the relationship, it can go a long way. Plus, I don't think we can keep our mistakes secret and feel good about ourselves. I mean, you carry that around. It's an open app in your head that won't ever close. Revealing what's going on and getting some love and compassion around it can help us heal. And like processing tender childhood things is a big one too. Can really make you feel very exposed, especially if you haven't really shared those details with anyone before. As hard as it is to do, the level of healing that can come from this can be so profound. To finally be seen, to finally be heard, to finally be validated. That you're not crazy or needy or ridiculous and that what happened was awful. And they're so sorry that happened to you. This goes even further, I think, because it helps us build self-trust and self-confidence. Because it helps you believe yourself. Like you make sense. Your insides matching your outsides. In another way, expressing insecurities in our friendships. Like one person might admit to their friends that they sometimes feel like an imposter. Maybe they're really struggling with self-doubt and insecurity. But by sharing these vulnerabilities, they challenge the fear of judgment and shame that often comes with imposter syndrome. Then they can have more open conversations and get some real support from their friends that they really need. But if they don't share that, then their friends don't know. So in all of these examples, vulnerability means taking a risk by revealing something personal, something sensitive, or challenging. But in doing so, we can often, with healthier people, find that our fears of judgment and shame are actually going to be met with empathy and understanding and support. Ultimately, a lot of times, leading to a greater connection and personal growth. You bond in those moments. Because half the time, you're not the only one sharing this stuff. At least you might be first, but typically what you did was just made it safe for the other person to share their stuff and to really know who you are as a person. Now, with unhealthy people who can't handle your vulnerability, it may not go as well. So I usually tell my clients, who do you know is safe and how have they shown you that it's safe? Well, number one, those people have been vulnerable with you at times appropriately and shared some stuff about themselves and shared their mindset around it too. And finally, encouraging support and seeking help. So vulnerability also extends to seeking help and support when we need it. It allows us to acknowledge our limitations, because we all have them, and ask for help. This means we don't always have to rely on ourselves or suffer needlessly. It also means we get to make peace with our limitations and embrace reality. And sometimes that can involve some grief work, especially if now you have a physical limitation or a medical limitation you never had. Maybe you're just getting older and you can't do all that lifting yourself. And you need to ask for help. And so there's a little bit of grieving that goes on, coming to terms with reality around that. I also think that we create a lot of problems when we don't do this. We create more pain for us and those around us too, because we become stubborn and then we make a mess. And the very outcome we're often trying to avoid, we're allowing to happen indirectly, right? So maybe we try to do stuff by ourselves, then we get hurt or we make a mess, then they got to come help us clean that up. When we could have just reached out initially and said, I probably shouldn't be lifting this heavy stuff in the garage. Do you think you can come over on Saturday and help? That is a difficult lesson for people to learn. And sometimes they need to repeat it a few times before they learn it and don't have to do it anymore. But it's so important for our personal growth. And I think the growing part here can also be extended to healing, because I think we make up for times in our lives when we were young, perhaps, or earlier in life, when we were supposed to be able to rely on caregivers and others in our life to listen and validate and hear us when we were being very vulnerable, but they couldn't. They could not show up that way. The people we needed the most may have let us down or were not in a space to be what we needed. So when we are doing it now, we can heal some of that, because finally someone is showing you that they hear you, they see you, they acknowledge you, and that you make sense, and that your pain matters to them, and they don't want you to hurt. They want you to feel safe. They want you to feel loved. They want you to feel cared about. And that is what helps us create deep and meaningful connections. Can't connect over surface stuff, but for so long. We need to connect around the real stuff. So how do we practice doing this? Well, here's some tips to get you started. I think if you really have deep struggles with this, get a coach to walk through this with you and get some support. But communicating our needs in healthy ways is so important. If we want to have healthy relationships, if we want to have self-respect, if we want to have all the things that we just talked about, we need to express them. So first, we have to become aware. Just start noticing throughout your day. I have clients do this all the time. Like, what do I need? What's going on? How am I feeling? What feels crappy? Why do I need that? Why does it make sense? Take me out. Put someone else worth their salt in my place. Would they need help with moving this stuff in the garage? Hell yeah, because they can't lift those boxes. Do the no wonder statement. No wonder I'm feeling this. No wonder I need this. It's a need, not a want. We can parse them out. Kids can do it. We can do it. Take time to reflect on what you truly require to feel happy, fulfilled, supported, and even just get real. Like maybe you need that stuff moved in the garage. Maybe you need help moving. Maybe you need a ride to the store to get your meds. Make sure you frame your needs as I statements. Make sure you own them. You want to express them this way. For example, saying, I feel overwhelmed when I have too many things to complete, instead of saying, you always give me too much work. Can't put our stuff on other people. If you've been listening long enough, you know I'm going to say that. The other thing is try to be clear and specific. And this is hard to do at first because when people are really afraid to put themselves out there, they might keep it kind of vague and hoping to God that the other person guesses what it is, right? Can you please read my mind? No, that's not how it works. Nor should that be how it works. We have to articulate our needs and be specific as to what we want and why it's important. Okay. I need you to pick me up on Saturday at 9 so I can get to that thing. Not, hey, I might need some help this weekend. You up for that? You can start with that, but you got to quickly get into asking the actual need, which when we are specific, we embrace risk, right? That makes it real. Timing is really important. Pick an appropriate time and private setting. Don't do a drive-by. Don't ask them like 5 minutes before. Don't hit people upside the head with big things. Try to be as proactive. Give the other person as much notice as you would love to have for self. That's usually a good indicator of what that time frame should look like. And do it privately. And then listen. Try not to react. Try not to get upset. Try to listen. Let them share their perspectives and feelings. Maybe you guys can negotiate. Show them empathy too, the same empathy you want from them. Understand the other person may also have their own needs, their own feelings. And it is an agreement that you guys are making. It's not one person's needs at the expense of the other. And try to stay in the solution. Try, instead of saying, I don't want you to be late on Saturday, say, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you could get there on time, if you can do that, because I have to be on time for that appointment. After a while, you'll get a lot better at collaboration. It'll become so much more comfortable where both of you can put your heads together and find a solution, right? It doesn't have to just come from you or from them. And the big thing is practice patience and practice boundaries. I don't really think that we can work on healthy needs without also working on boundaries. I really do think they're intertwined because you have to clearly define your personal boundaries and communicate them with other people. Well, if you say, I need time on Saturday, you might have to say no to some other things on Saturday so that you can get your needs met. So they work together hand in hand. And make sure you work on your assertiveness skills so you can express your needs with confidence while trying to respect the other person too. So you really want to avoid the passive-aggressive stuff if you can. And just practice and work on it and make the amend or say you're sorry if you screw it up. Go back and say, look, I was just really stressed out about the weekend. I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you taking me to my appointment. And if you feel like you need to do a deeper dive, get the course because I'm talking about all of this stuff together and much more in there. And remember that doing this work and getting better at it is a skill and gets better over time. The more that you do it, the more you mess it up, the more you learn. Okay, but it's so worth it because you're going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much more authentic. You're going to find actually the right people are going to love being around you more because they know you and they get you and you're real. And you make it safe for them to be real as well. What a gift. And what a revelation that it's not always all about us, huh? So today we got into, I think, what I call the transformative power of vulnerability and its role in meeting our needs in healthy ways. We looked at how embracing being real and authentic and openly, vulnerably expressing our desires, our fears, and our insecurities can actually create deeper connections in our relationships. We discussed the significance of recognizing and fulfilling healthy needs. We need to do it. And we emphasize that vulnerability is the key. It's the key to unlocking self-acceptance, personal growth, and becoming more emotionally resilient, becoming more grounded, and I think happier, and ironically, nicer to be around. All right, so if you are interested in the course, you want to jump in, at least join the Facebook group, hit the link in the show notes. And if you don't get the newsletter that comes out each week that has all the great new stuff that's going to be going on, go to ownitpowercast.com and sign up there. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.